Oh guys, after a long time I'm doing a reaction video again. This reaction video is how Bangladesh is secretly becoming the richest country in the world. Now yeah, let's watch this video.
Subjected to catastrophic natural
I'm a Bangladeshi, so yeah, I guess I would enjoy this video.
disasters and haunted by perpetual and often violent political instability, seem devoid of a clear path toward making things better. It was a widespread perception that Bangladesh was destined to be forever synonymous with poverty and suffering, earning it the unflattering label as an international basket case. But astonishingly, against all conceivable odds, the past 3 decades have seen the country achieve perhaps the most significant advancement in quality of life indicators of any place in the world ever. Life expectancy has soared by 180%, while fatalities from tropical cyclones have been reduced by a staggering 100-fold. Poverty rates have dived from 80% to less than 19, while the child mortality rate has been cut by 92%. Its economy has emerged as one of the fastest growing in the world, with its GDP per capita once 50% less than Pakistan's, now almost 50% higher. And in 2019, it overtook even India, while harboring aspirations of reaching high income status by 2041. But how can a nation with all the odds stacked against it improve at such a blistering pace? Is this truly another economic miracle or a mirage that will painfully wither away? You ever wondered why you've been receiving an only IP information employment hit? Sign up right now. The Liberation War as a political prisoner. As Sheikh Mujibur Rahman returned home to his shattered nation in early
Part 2 of this video, part 1 and part 2. This video is too long, that's why.
1972, having spent the duration of the Liberation War as a political prisoner, he faced a seemingly insurmountable task. As leader of the Awami League, the primary political force behind the independence movement, it was his responsibility as prime minister to fix Bangladesh. This entailed rapidly restoring law and order, constructing the nation's political institutions and infrastructure from the ground up, and formulating a cohesive plan for swift economic development. Yet he was to accomplish all of this with virtually non-existent resources. Adding to the complexity, the coalition force that had united against Pakistan during the war rapidly fragmented into various factions, each scrambling for control over economic assets and political power. In response to this escalating political instability, Mujibur and the AL found themselves prioritizing party loyalty over merit when appointing officials, a strategy aimed at safeguarding their precarious grip on power. Coupled with the grim reality that many of those who possessed the qualifications and expertise to work in government had been systematically eliminated during the war, the initial government grappled with a severely impaired capacity to devise and implement effective developmental policies. Nevertheless, the first issue to resolve involved determining the fate of properties and assets once owned by the former Pakistani elites. This was particularly important given that after 24 years of economic subjugation, these elites owned the vast majority of industries and businesses within the country. Seeing this as an opportunity to strengthen the power of the state, the government swiftly nationalized over 700 of these firms.
Bangladesh is a really cyclone-y, really, like, I don't know, bad weather country. Today, in Bangladesh now, today, it rained really fucking heavy. It's after the Eid, and yeah. Today rained really heavy. The streets are like all wet. Yeah.
So these were handed over to loyalists and party supporters, many of whom lacked prior industry-specific experience or knowledge. This move set the government on a course toward a socialist economic system, eventually resulting in state ownership of all banking and insurance sectors, and a stunning 92% of industries across the board. The remnants of the private sector found themselves burdened with heavy regulations and import restrictions, even being subjected to profit caps. Meanwhile, foreign investment was outlawed unless partnered with the government. It didn't take long for the harsh reality to set in. This had been a massive mistake. Under poor management, the state-controlled economy faltered dramatically. After just 3 years, industrial output declined by 66% due to inefficiencies. And after forcing farmers to sell their products at artificially low prices, agricultural output, the backbone of the economy, and the primary income source for a majority of the population, plummeted by 84% compared to its pre-war level. Food was becoming ever more scarce, but the situation quickly turned dire. From April to July 1974, heavy rainfall led to catastrophic floods that wiped out the nation's rice crop. The economic impact was disastrous. Inflation soared to 400%, leading to widespread hoarding and speculation, while the government's food rationing system was brought to its knees by corruption. To compound the crisis, the United States, protesting Bangladesh's continued trade with embargoed Cuba, withheld 2.2 million tons of food aid. Within just 9 months, 1.5 million people perished from starvation. The fallout from these events severely undermined Mujibur's support, fueling the formation of a wide-reaching anti-Mujibur coalition, bolstered by the military and an emerging class of capitalists. Facing this opposition, Mujibur became increasingly authoritarian. He declared a state of emergency, consolidating his power as both prime minister and president. He established his own paramilitary force, which was used to torture opposition members and intimidate the population. He abolished other political parties, banned independent press.
I guess Sheikh Mujibur was a shady person. Yeah.
Instituted martial law and doubled down on his bid to create a socialist state. By 1975, Bangladesh was transforming into a one-party totalitarian socialist state. But this didn't last long. In August of
Bangladesh is still one-party totalitarian. What the fuck that is? One-party state country. Our politics is really bad. Really, that's what.
same year, a violent military coup resulted in the assassination of Mujibur and his extended family. His two daughters studying in Europe were the only survivors. Political chaos swiftly erupted with a rapid series of coups and counter-coups. When the dust finally settled, the martial law administrator, General Ziaur Rahman, more popularly known as Zia, rose to power in 1977. Subsequently, he established the Bangladesh Nationalist Party, or BNP, and started enacting sweeping policy shifts, the most consequential of which was an emphasis he placed on attracting foreign aid. Numerous Western countries and international donors had been willing to extend significant aid to Bangladesh since its independence. However, they insisted that a precondition for this support was a pivot by Bangladesh away from socialism and toward a more liberalized economic system. Under Mujibur's leadership, the government had been reluctant to make such concessions. However, by the time Zia assumed power, the situation had worsened to such a degree that aid became a desperate necessity. To appease foreign donors, restrictions on foreign investment were lifted, the stock market was reactivated, tariffs and duties were reduced, and a slow process of selling off state-owned companies began. In doing this, Bangladesh started receiving massive amounts of foreign aid as promised, amounting to just under $1 billion in 1977, or 8% of the nation's GDP. Meanwhile, the reforms themselves started to improve the economy, and most critically, for agriculture, something that was of particular importance as the nation was already the most densely populated in the world. The previously vast, subsidized public food system and price restrictions were dismantled, while restrictions on imports like fertilizer, mechanized irrigation equipment, and pesticides were removed. Yet the most impactful development was the introduction of high-yielding variety rice crops, which were specifically developed to resist disease, shorten the growth cycle, and increase the caloric output per acre. Farmers were now able to produce more food on the same plots of land, and were even able to start growing in the winter. As a result of these developments, despite a 10% reduction in the use of land, agricultural output tripled from 1971 to 2010, ensuring Bangladesh did not suffer another famine after 1974. Despite these initial successes, in which the economy doubled in size in less than 5 years, Zia decided against reforming the economy further. Combined with a fall in foreign aid and a series of poor harvests, by the early 1980s, economic growth slowed significantly. Coupled with Zia's efforts to depoliticize the military, a sense of uncertainty and stagnation began to grow, ultimately triggering 21 new coup attempts, the last of which successfully took out Zia. Bangladesh was once again thrust into political chaos. After a final bloodless military coup, Army Chief of Staff Hussein Mohammed Ershad took control of the country in 1983. In his effort to avoid ending up like Zia, Ershad solidified his power through an increase in authoritarian measures. He outlawed unions in rival political parties, disbanded the constitution, and reinstated martial law. Despite his promises to transition the country into a democracy, he consistently deferred elections and manipulated referendums to his advantage. However, Ershad reignited the economic reform process that had begun under Zia. The rest of the Mujibur-era restrictions on the private sector were eliminated. A much larger portion of the state-owned industries were transitioned into private ownership, and businesses were now allowed to compete in banking, insurance, and other financial sectors. Yet the largest endeavor was a coordinated effort to stimulate export-oriented economic growth, inspired by the then recent successes of Hong Kong, Singapore, South Korea, and Taiwan. This was initiated with the establishment of an export processing zone in the country's southeast. Within this 450-acre zone, companies are allowed to import machinery, equipment, and manufacturing materials tax-free, so long as they are strictly used in the production of goods for export. This was complemented with the introduction of back-to-back letters of credit, which essentially is a financial tool used to decrease the risk for foreign companies selling machinery and equipment to Bangladeshi business owners, something that had previously plagued industrial expansion. Yet strangely, for all these expansive economic reforms, the most important development that occurred under the Ershad government was what it decided not to do. Ever since Bangladesh emerged as one of the poorest and least developed countries on Earth, it became a magnet for non-government organizations, or NGOs, many of which were homegrown in the aftermath of the Independence War. While there was government cooperation with these NGOs prior, Ershad expressed a profound level of openness with them, enabling them to provide everything from educational and financial services to healthcare and family planning. This, however, is unusual. Typically, countries suffering from political instability, and especially those headed by military regimes, are reluctant to let NGOs take over such basic services because traditionally these services are tools used by the government to ensure public support. Allowing non-state actors to take over is often feared to weaken the government's legitimacy and thus threatens the power of those in charge. Yet Bangladesh's government at the time was just too weak to provide all necessary services, and any attempt to raise taxes was seen as a more politically costly maneuver. Therefore, Ershad allowed NGOs to operate untethered, and soon after, Bangladesh became a so-called laboratory for new experimental poverty-reducing initiatives, and two NGOs in particular would change the nation forever. In 1976, university economics professor Muhammad Yunus closely observed the abject poverty experienced in the small village of Jobra near his home. In his studies, he found that one of the biggest hurdles that people faced in the community was a lack of access to money to which they could use to improve their productive capabilities. But the nation's financial sector was weak, and banks either refused to give the poor small loans or exploited them with outrageous interest rates. After experimenting with different methods of loaning his own money, Yunus pioneered the modern idea of microcredit. Poor rural residents were asked to form groups of 5 and were each given tiny loans without the need for collateral. They were then guided to use the loans.
Yeah, guys, the half of the video is pretty much end. And yeah, this is the part 1, and the part 2 reaction is coming soon. Yeah, thanks for watching this video. Yeah, I make cool videos like this. Yeah, and yeah, I'm really sleepy, so I can't say anything. So yeah, thanks for watching this video. Bye.